numerous rituals of the realm, which in the Queen's case brought together her role as monarch and mother. In a ceremony designed by Lord Snowdon, the Queen invested her son and heir, Charles, Prince of Wales, at Carnarvon Castle in July 1969. Another landmark in the Queen's long reign came with her Silver Jubilee in 1977. The nation... People turned out in their tens of thousands for her walkabout outside St Paul's Cathedral.
An immense crowd of people turned out and demonstrated their affection for her. She really felt quite overcome by the way people felt about her, that they obviously loved her and appreciated it and weren't just regarding her as the Queen, but as something more personal.
When I was 21, I pledged my life to the service of our people, and I asked for God's help to make good that vow. Although that vow was made in my salad days when I was green in judgment, I do not regret nor retract one word of it.
When Queen Elizabeth's heir, Prince Charles, married Lady Diana Spencer in July 1981, no one imagined what lay ahead. There was an invited congregation of 3,500 at St Paul's Cathedral. Crowds thronged the streets, and a television audience estimated at 750 million people tuned in to watch. For a time, the marriage seemed idyllic. But the extreme difficulty of living in the spotlight of publicity began to become clear.
Cherish and to obey.
And the Queen's extreme aversion to divorce began to weaken too. It all came to a head in 1992. The Duke and Duchess of York, who'd married in 1986, separated in March. Princess Anne was divorced from her husband Mark Phillips in April. Problems of Charles and Diana's marriage were publicly aired in excruciating detail throughout that year.
I always felt an enormous sympathy for both the Queen and Prince Philip when very, very sadly their children's apparently happy marriages started to fall apart. Having been through the same very sad experience and totally unexpected when one was young myself, I know only too well how deeply saddening and worrying this situation is.
It was always said that you could tell the Queen was distressed when she took the dogs for a walk twice. She'd take them out, bring them back, and then take them out again. But it stands to reason that the incredibly intimate, distressing details of what went wrong in her two elder sons' marriages were deeply embarrassing, not just to her as monarch, but much more hurtfully to her as a mother.
Then disaster of another kind struck, and once again it had public and personal implications. Windsor Castle caught fire during renovations on the 20th of November. The Queen wasn't only distressed by the destruction of one of the most ancient symbols of the monarchy, she was also deeply upset. Windsor Castle was her family home. The physical damage to the castle was bad enough, but worse was to come. Unfortunately, the castle was not insured. The government's proposal that the cost should be borne by the taxpayer caused a furore.
I remember with distaste what happened after the Windsor fire, when everybody said, why can't she rebuild the castle? She's got the money, why doesn't she do it? as if Windsor Castle was not part of the English heritage and part of our national life.
The Queen's finances had been under scrutiny for some time, and there was public disquiet that she paid no tax on her private income. Now it was decided, in a deal that looked as if the Queen's hand might have been forced, that the cost of the repairs to Windsor Castle would be borne by the public purse. But she and Prince Charles would start to pay tax the following year. The Queen admitted her public and private difficulties in a rare revelation of her feelings at a speech at the Guildhall in London, marking the 40th anniversary of her accession to the throne.
"1992 is not a year on which I shall look back with undiluted pleasure. In the words of one of my more sympathetic correspondents, it has turned out to be an annus horribilis."
She knew how badly her children's marital problems and her own tax wrangle had played out in the country at large.
No institution, city, monarchy, whatever, should expect to be free from the scrutiny of those who give it their loyalty and support. Not to
Palace that, with regret, the Prince and Princess of Wales have decided to separate. Their Royal Highnesses had no plans to divorce, and their constitutional positions are unaffected.
The Prince and Princess of Wales did divorce in 1996, but Princess Diana's story had an end that no one could have foreseen, and one which led to a painful conflict for the Queen. In the early hours of the 31st of August, Diana and Dodi Al-Fayed were killed when the driver, Henri Paul, pursued by paparazzi, crashed a hired Mercedes into a concrete pillar in an underpass in Paris.
It's just very sad. I didn't really follow much about her in life, but her death has hit me. I can't explain it.
It was a crisis which brought the two sides of the Queen's life, public and private, into direct conflict.
The death of Diana was a particularly difficult and almost dangerous period for the Queen and Prince Philip and the whole royal family, because the most extraordinary thing happened that the British public, which were usually completely phlegmatic and not particularly worried about things, became quite hysterical.
Privately, as a grandmother, she wanted to protect two young boys who had lost their mother. It was also vital to comfort the future King of England in a period of harrowing grief. And yet the Queen was also facing the strident clamour for her public presence in London.
We were shaken to the core. Everybody must have been. My reaction would have been, if I'd had my grandchildren there, keep them here safe and quiet, nobody can get at them, and we're here. And everybody else is having to deal with it that end. But, the perception wasn't that. And I think that's sad, actually. I really think if you searched your soul, you'd probably have done exactly the same thing.
There was a definite threat. There were polls talking about a republic. There was mad talk in that week.
The Queen did finally come down to London and address the nation in a moving tribute to Diana, live from Buckingham Palace. It brought together her personal feelings and her public role as never before.
What I say to you now, as your Queen and as a grandmother, I say from my heart. First, I want to pay tribute to Diana myself. I, for one, believe there are lessons to be drawn from her life and from the extraordinary and moving reaction to her death. I hope that tomorrow we can all, wherever we are, join in expressing our grief at Diana's loss and gratitude for her all too short life.
That broadcast was so perfectly modulated, calibrated, so magnificently, which she changed in her own handwriting, various phrases that other people, including the government, had wanted her to say. She only said what she believed, what came from her heart.
And she looked so sad. She looked so proud and sad, and it was just nice that she showed her feelings at us.
I think she should have been before, but I'm glad she came.
She's our mother, if you like, and we were mourning without her. And now she's mourning with us.
With the support of the Queen and the other senior members of the family, the two young princes were able to carry out their solemn task. In the years after Diana's death, Queen Elizabeth formed an even closer bond with Prince William and Prince Harry.
One of the success stories of the Queen's reign in its later years was William. The incredible role the Queen played in helping him as a grandmother. She was a brilliant grandmother, and of course in terms of the monarchy, was brilliant in shaping someone who would seem to be a great successor for the future.
There came a succession of important family occasions, as ever played out in the public gaze. The golden anniversary of the Queen and Prince Philip's close and loving marriage fell in November 1997. In matching speeches, they showed their mutual affection.
It's been a challenge for us, but by trial and experience, I believe we have achieved a sensible division of labour and a good balance between our individual and joint interests. Of course, after 50 years of experience, I find there's a great temptation to give advice. And the trouble is that no two marriages are quite alike. However, I think that the main lesson that we've learnt is that tolerance is the one essential ingredient of any happy marriage. It may not be quite so important when things are going well, but it is absolutely vital when things get difficult.
All too often, I fear Prince Philip has had to listen to me speaking. Frequently, we have discussed my intended speech beforehand, and as you will imagine, his views have been expressed in a forthright manner. He is someone who doesn't take easily to compliments, but he has quite simply been my strength and stay all these years. And I and his whole family, and this and many other countries, owe him a debt greater than he would ever claim, or we shall ever know.
The Queen's Golden Jubilee fell in 2002. Amidst the celebrations that year came a double blow. Her beloved sister, Princess Margaret, who some say had never fully recovered from her thwarted love affair, died in February. And just a month later, her mother, Queen Elizabeth, the Queen Mother, passed away at the age of 101. Her father had called the royal family Us Four. Now, only the Queen herself remained.
I thank you for the support you are giving me and my family as we come to terms with her death and the void she has left in our midst. I thank you also from my heart for the love you gave her during her life and the honour you now give her in death. May God bless you all.
Although they were both divorced, the Queen finally agreed that her heir, Prince Charles, should be allowed to marry the woman he loved, Camilla Parker Bowles. And her own marriage finally celebrated its diamond wedding anniversary in November 2007. The Queen wasn't often off duty, but over her long life she had one genuine private passion for horses. She was given her first pony when she was just 4, and she'd always ridden as often as she could. She loved to attend the badminton horse trials. One of her favourite events of the year was the Windsor Horse Show, where she had competed as a young princess.
She could see the showground from her window. Must have been an added bonus. She walked around and mingled with the crowd, unnoticed largely, with just a headscarf and a husky jacket on, and she just wanted to enjoy it privately and informally, and that's what she did the whole time. In that regard, it was a unique event for her.
The Queen also had a long-term commitment to horse racing. After many years of trying to win the Epsom Derby, in 2011 she stood a real chance again with her horse Carlton House.
I was at the Derby, and we were all very much hoping that the horse was going to win. About 2 furlongs out, those of us on the balcony of the Royal Box really thought it was going to win, and we were all cheering like mad.
But Carlton House was beaten by the fast-finishing Pour Moi.
The Queen's been in racing so long, she knows exactly. But it must have been terribly disappointing, but she never showed it. And she carried on and was happy and smiling and greeted the winners of the Derby as if nothing had happened, because she hadn't even had a horse in the race. She was wonderful, and we were all very sad for it. We really wanted her to win the Derby.
Little were they all to know that just 2 years later, Her Majesty's horse Estimate would win the Gold Cup at Ascot. The Queen clapped her hands in delight. She had become the first reigning monarch to win the trophy.
The sheer joy. Magnificent scenes. The crowd seeing that as well on the big screen.
Overall, 2011 was an extremely important year for the Queen. In April, Prince William and Kate Middleton married. Once again, this was an occasion which united her monarchical role with her family one. The second in line to the throne was also, of course, her grandson. Mindful of the dynastic importance of the event, and no doubt remembering her own happy wedding day more than 60 years before, the Queen made sure the wedding was faultlessly choreographed.
The wedding of Prince William, of which I had the honour of being present in my capacity as High Bailiff of Westminster Abbey, I cannot fault. The moment was right, and I thought the media were incredibly respectful. Everything went like clockwork. It drew everybody together, and it's what everybody wanted.
Although the Queen was now well into her 80s, she was still capable of... It was particularly poignant, given Philip's uncle, Lord Louis Mountbatten, had been killed there during the Troubles. He was someone she and the family had been particularly close to.
Åkte Ryan? Argus Akoida. To all those who have suffered as a consequence of our troubled past, I extend my sincere thoughts and deep sympathy. With the benefit of historical hindsight, we can all see things which we would wish had been done differently, or not at all.
The fact she knew how to speak decent Irish. The Irish were incredibly impressed with how good the accent was. But that gesture, after decades of bitterness and bloodshed, which affected her greatly, that was another moment people would remember all their lives.
The following year, there was another momentous step forward in Anglo-Irish relations. During a trip to Northern Ireland, the Queen and former IRA commander Martin McGuinness shook hands, something that had been unthinkable in previous times, as Queen Elizabeth celebrated her Diamond Jubilee. The highlight was a long weekend of special events in London. Boats of every size and description processed down the river for the Thames pageant, and even the miserable weather couldn't dampen the royal couple's good humour. But Prince Philip was to miss the rest of the celebrations through illness. At a huge concert outside Buckingham Palace, Prince Charles led calls for his father to get well soon.
The only sad thing about this evening is that my father couldn't be here with us, because unfortunately he is taken unwell, but Ladies and gentlemen, if we shout loud enough, he might just hear us in hospital and get...
After the pomp and circumstance of the Jubilee year, came a moment of charming levity to celebrate Britain's hosting of the Olympics.
Mr. Bond, Your Majesty.
Good evening, Your Majesty.
Well, I think the general public were astonished. Even people who knew the Queen thought this must be an actress doing it, or this can't be real. It's very, very, I'd say, very sporting of her to have done it.
With the arrival of the Duke and Duchess of Cambridge's baby, Prince George, in July 2013, the line of succession was further secured. The royal family continued to grow, and these final years of her reign would be marked by more joyous family occasions. But as the longevity of the Queen's reign started to break records, it would also be the start of a slowdown in public life. On the 9th of September 2015, the Queen became our longest reigning monarch, surpassing the reign of her great-great-grandmother, Queen Victoria. She marked the occasion in Scotland at the opening of the Scottish Borders Railway.
Inevitably, a long life can pass by many milestones. My own is no exception.
In November of the same year, the Queen and the Duke of Edinburgh made their final state trip abroad, poignantly to Malta, where they had spent some of their happiest years. Now well into her 90s, the Queen stepped down from some of the more strenuous duties, but she remained a steadfast and highly active head of state.
Buckingham Palace were always at pains to stress that she didn't have a day without looking at her red boxes, except perhaps Christmas Day, and that she was continuing to be very hard-working and to carry out engagements.
She was extremely busy. She was very useful. In fact, became more and more useful as a monarch the longer she reigned, because her experience became greater. You know, she bestowed such an element of calm over Britain and the Commonwealth that even her mere presence, I think, was something which was incredibly reassuring.
With national and family crises. In 2019, the Duke of York, who's often considered to be the Queen's favourite son, faced probing questions about his friendship with a convicted sex offender. The pressure led to the Prince stepping back from public life. And the Duke and Duchess of Sussex, having spoken candidly about the stresses of being modern royals during a tour of Africa, resigned their roles as working members of the royal family.
Some might see 2019 as a second Annus Horribilis after 1992. As with a lot of these crises, the Queen came through it by some of the scandals that they did.
But while 2019 was tough for the Queen's family, 2020 proved an even greater challenge for her country. The coronavirus was spreading across the UK, with thousands losing their lives and millions being told to stay at home. Recognising the magnitude of the crisis, the Queen gave an unscheduled television address, only the 5th of her reign.
Together we are tackling this disease, and I want to reassure you that if we remain united and resolute, then we will overcome it.
I think everybody felt a lot better for hearing.
We have more still to endure. Better days will return. We will be with our friends again. We will be with our families again. We will meet again.
announced it would not be long before Queen Elizabeth would suffer a great loss of her own, when on the 9th of April 2021, her husband of 73 years, the Duke of Edinburgh, died at home in Windsor at the age of 99.
As you can imagine, my family and I miss my father enormously. He was a much-loved and appreciated figure.
The nation celebrated his life of service in a moving ceremony scaled back but not diminished by the pandemic.
After what had been a horrific 12 months for everyone, she has to go to his funeral at Windsor Castle in a face mask, completely isolated from the rest of her loved ones. At that point, the royal family was just like the rest of us.
We have been inspired by his unwavering loyalty to our Queen.
Family members later said, yes, it was awful. We couldn't go and give her a hug. I think the public really felt for her that day.
Despite her great personal loss, she returned to public duties within weeks.
She didn't become the widow of Windsor like Queen Victoria. I think she was very wise to keep going.
We think back, don't we, at monarchs and what are they called, and we'd say, Queen Elizabeth II, Elizabeth the Dutiful would probably be the right description. Always having this stalwart commitment to public service, as declared on her 21st birthday, and I think that's been emblematic of her reign.
This one is coming from the Victoria General.
On the 6th of February this year, Queen Elizabeth II celebrated her Platinum Jubilee, marking her 70th year on the throne.
You must promise to take him on from President Biden.
That's very kind. Yes.
And in June, the country came together to celebrate her reign over 4 days of events.
Carriages have come down, the military have come down. It's now the turn for everybody else. They've come to see the one British monarch, the only British monarch who's reigned for 70 years.
Despite failing health, Queen Elizabeth was joined by members of her family on the balcony of Buckingham Palace to witness the pageantry and to enjoy the outpouring of love and gratitude from so many of her British and Commonwealth subjects, and many more visitors from around the world.
You're Portugal, Paris, and where are you? Pakistan. Are you all from the US?
I'm from the US.
Is it worth it?
Yes, it is.
She's not even your queen.
Huh? Oh, she's our queen.
Including one from Peru.
Perhaps you would like a marmalade sandwich. I always keep one for emergencies.
So do I. I keep mine in here.
Even in this most ceremonial of weekends, she delighted the country with her humour and her ability to surprise. Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II was the sovereign in 8 decades. She was a constant in an ever-changing world. All her many prime ministers knew the secrets of their private conversations would remain with her alone. In all those long years, she was at the very heart of the country, weaving together